Hello, everybody. How are you all doing today? Welcome to HypnoTalk. This is Troy, and I am here with
Janna, your friendly hypnotherapist.
Very friendly hypnotherapist. And tonight is a full moon.
Oh, full moon.
Right?
Cool.
So full moon, release. That's what we do on full moons, releasing things. Yes, like spring cleaning. Remember we talked about spring cleaning a few episodes ago.
Yes, we did.
I don't know about you, but I'm going to do my full moon ceremony and I'm going to release some stuff. How about you? Are you doing anything special? Or are you just going to enjoy
I have been. Of course, I think I was talking to you before we went live and this is a little adjunct to listening to me. If you're not familiar with Eckhart Tolle, I'm doing a training with him right now. And there's something very magical about just it's almost a gear shifting where we've been in a certain pattern, and it's not that pattern was bad or wrong, but maybe now it's time to kind of gear up into the next phase and the next phase. And as you well know, been very enraptured with philosophies in the past phase and ways of thinking about things. And now I'm gearing up into a phase that's more about letting go of thinking at all. And it's exciting. So I love that full moons do that. Talking about getting rid of things, I remember when I've got 4 kids, when I would go to the hospital, the nurses said that on a full moon, they deliver more babies than any other day of the month. It's like a real thing. There can be nobody in the hospital, maybe onesies, twosies here and there, and then it's a full moon. They got people stacked in the hallways waiting for those labor and delivery rooms.
So there's a lot of stuff that goes on in the full moon, huh? Not just
the
tides.
Because
right?
Things are being birthed and You said let go of. So of course I went into labor where the body is letting go of the kid.
Poof.
That's where I go.
Got it. Awesome. Well, hey, you know what? I'm going to say that everybody enjoy your full moon ceremony, or just enjoy the full moon. If you don't have a ceremony, it's okay. And we're here to talk about, though, the benefits of hypnotherapy, because we have been debunking quite a few myths of people being mind controlled and puppeteered and all that kind of stuff. That isn't really true. Doesn't really happen. You are the boss of you. You are in control of you.
Mm-hmm.
So we busted all these myths. We're here to now talk about what are the really great values of why should people go to hypnotherapy or see you, Janna? Why? What's one of the top reasons?
Well, we were talking earlier about things like fear and worry and anxiety. When I first started my practice, I wanted to be everything to everybody. So I would have people coming in to quit smoking and other people coming in for sports performance. And it didn't take very long for me to realize that with every person, really, no matter why they were coming in, we were dealing with their underlying anxieties about life, or their fears, or their chronic thinking habits that they just knew they didn't want, but they just couldn't help but wake up in the middle of the night and worry. So I started to develop and integrate a lot more anxiety related hypnotherapy. And I continue to do that. Not all hypnotherapists are quite as enamored with cause. And I credit my mother for teaching me during gardening. I hated pulling weeds. My mother was an avid gardener when I was a very little girl, and we would go to the nursery and buy flowers. but it was part of my chores was to pull weeds. And I've got to tell you, I did not like it, not one little bit. She was very specific that I had to make sure and get that weed up by the roots. And she said, if you don't get the weed up by the roots, it's going to look really good for a while, but it's going to grow right back, and it's going to grow back stronger.
True.
And the same is true of the changes we're making. We want to rid ourselves of that underlying root system that we don't want. If it's a weed, we want to pull it out, and I want to pull it out by the roots. I want to make sure that all of that cause is gone, because then the person has much more room for the peace and the joy, and they're free of that these chronic mind patterns and thinking habits.
So hypnosis is able to pull that anxiety conversation out by the root. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes and no. It's really the hypnosis is the tool that helps to access the subconscious part of the mind, where those gut disturbances live and where they've been glommed onto as part of our survival mechanism. And we want a good survival mechanism in case we go for a walk in the woods and a bear comes.
Yeah, you got to run. You can't, oh, that bear, he's harmless. I'll just keep walking in the woods. And next thing you know, you're bear food.
Right. And so you need that adrenaline then. So it's a good thing, but it's a very rare time where we actually need that.
So for example, somebody who is afraid of public speaking.
Okay.
They literally say, if I go up on stage, I'm gonna die.
That's that gut feeling. That's a perfect example. They're not really afraid of the public speaking. They're afraid of the mind pattern that gets triggered that feels bad. Because if you put them one-on-one in front of any one of those individuals in that audience, they'd be just fine. But when you get this, it's this concept that got into the deeper mind of, oh no. It's a fear, and they know it's irrational. They know that they can watch other people speak on a stage. And even if that person opened their mouth and their brains fell out, that person wouldn't die.
They wouldn't even have a heart attack.
No. So there's ways then to, but if I had a teacher actually at HMI College of Hypnotherapy, and she tells this story all the time, that she was actually a hypnotherapy client who was in a very high pressure career, and she was going to have to get on a stage and give a presentation. And so she was so afraid of public speaking that she went, and the college at the time had a program where if you went and were hypnotized on the stage 6 times, they do it for free as a way to train the new hypnotherapists. So she signed up for that, and she went in and she was the guinea pig and had a bunch of students sitting there taking notes. She was so excited. Not only did she get over her fear of public speaking, but she decided she wanted to ditch that career and become a hypnotherapist. I've had 3 clients, I think, that I know of who have gone and become hypnotherapists just because, for the exact same reason. They're so excited about the process that they want to go do that for a living now.
So we talk about results. Based on results, people see the incredible results and they want to actually get into it. That's pretty remarkable.
Well, it's the barrier between conscious and subconscious is significant, and by design we're designed to hold our fears because of bears. But the subconscious mind doesn't realize that public speaking isn't a bear. It can't think and make those discernments. It just holds on to the fear. When we open that barrier, then we can let that subconscious in on the fact that that public speaking is just so much fun. It's so much fun.
I love it, but there are a lot of people who are scared to death. But I guess the mind, as long as you know you're not going to be turned into dinner if you totally bomb your speech, you're okay.
Yeah, and it's really a question of how do you want to feel? Like a lot of people will say, well, public speaking would be great. I'd be able to reach so many more people with my message. I'd be able to help so many more people. If only I could get up on a stage and say something. How do you want to feel then? Well, I want to feel happy and relaxed on a stage. Okay, great. So now as long as that's something they want, then we can go make that happen.
That's cool. We didn't talk about this, but I'm curious about phobias. Little different than just, oh, I'm going to die if I bomb the speech. What about phobias? People, I don't want to go out of my house, or I'm scared of spiders.
And I did extensive work in that area. There's not just one way to get around a phobia. There's many different techniques. There's many different schools of thought. And I use sometimes, depending on what the fear is and the personality of the person, sometimes I'll address it with therapeutic imagery, and sometimes I'll address it with NLP. Neuro-linguistic programming has some good techniques. Now, NLP isn't about getting rid of the root cause. It will break the neuro pathway, not literally, but it will put a stop mechanism between the neural pathway, between the thinking mind and the cluster of neurons that's overfiring, about spiders, for example. So if you took a person with a phobia and you started talking about the spiders that they were afraid of, they would start freaking out just during the conversation. Just imagining the spiders, they'd start to sweaty palms.
You would have a physiological reaction.
Yeah.
To
so
that.
that shows, and this is from Richard Bandler, who and John Grinder back in the 60s invented NLP. They discovered it, and I learned NLP from Richard Bandler. I actually flew to London and took a very expensive NLP training course just because I wanted to learn about phobias from Richard. And he brought people up onto the stage who were so scared of spiders. And he said, it's not the spider you're afraid of. It's the thought about the spider. It's the response that's in the brain that feels bad. And they said, no, I'm really afraid of spiders. And he said, I can prove you're not afraid of spiders right now. And they would be in a full panic because they knew that there was a spider backstage. And they knew that after Richard cured their phobia, they're going to bring that spider out. Whoops, I'm knocking things off in my zeal to.
That's awesome, though,
gesture.
Because I could just imagine a big spider, like somebody afraid of a spider. And there's a big spider.
The people from the London Zoo had tarantulas and snakes in the back.
I love it.
But people were in tears crying before they were even getting up on the stage. And most of them are changing their minds and thinking, no, I don't think I want to. And he'd say, why are you crying right now? He's, I'm afraid of spiders. He said, no, you're not. They said, why not? He says, look around, there's no spider.
Brilliant.
Well, there is backstage. And he says, well, I told you there was one backstage. Maybe there is and maybe there isn't. Do you see a spider right now? No. Well, then that's not what's triggering you, is it? It's not the spider. It's the thought about the spider. It's the reaction within that you've got built around spider. It's this bundle of neurons that's triggering this fight flight. That's the problem, not the spider.
That's amazing.
So we want to take care of that. So NLP will take care of that. It will put an interruption between thinking about a spider and that historic bundle of neurons. Or whatever the person, it could be a claustrophobic reaction. It could be a snake. It could be the list is endless of what people have been afraid of. And NLP has basically, I can't ever say the word cured, but it's handled every phobia I've had. And I've had 2. 3.
Hmm.
It's handled 2 of the 3. The third one I haven't dealt with because it's a fear of heights that I would just prefer not to go to high places. So I haven't worked on that one.
Yeah. So I found out about a phobia the other day. It's a phobia of man-made objects in the water. And if somebody's scuba diving and they see man-made objects, they freak out about that.
That's a new one.
That's a very interesting one.
But I would love to hear more about that. If someone has that, for goodness sakes, write something in the comments about it so that I can sink my teeth into that one.
Yeah, I
That's a
see.
cool one.
Yeah, I see there are a couple people watching right now. I would love to hear what your phobias are.
Yeah.
Look, I have the heights one too, and I am with you. And I even went on ropes courses trying to conquer the fear, but you're right. I choose not to stand out on the ledge and do a Tom Cruise in Mission Impossible when he's standing out on the, like in Singapore on the tower. I would choose not to do that.
Now, I did the ropes course back in the 80s. You and I come from a very similar background with our trainings. And I love the ropes course, but up on that tree, up on that ledge, that actually made my phobia worse. I didn't have a breakthrough on that particular exercise. And now that I've done the hypnotherapy training, I understand why a fear of heights and a phobic reaction are 2 very different things.
Got it. Yeah. True, right?
Yeah.
I grabbed the ring and everything, but I choose not to have. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
So that's really good. Now you talked about NLP, but you also talked about something around imagery. Do you create some kind of imagery that the fear is actually not real or not a fear? Or
depends on the person. It depends on what's needed. So there's ways in imagery, you may or may not have to be visual. I do imagery with people who are not visual, and it works just as well. There's other techniques. In other words, a person can fantasize about something, not necessarily be able to see it, but imagery works for certain personality types. I use it when I do spoken sessions. Sometimes I will want to find out more, or the client will want to find out, I don't know why I have this feeling. And if why is an important question, which sometimes it is and sometimes it's not. But when it is, like if we got off of phobias for a moment, started talking about decision making. For example, I love helping teens who have just graduated high school and they're so scared they're not going to get into their dream school. And I had one girl one time who got into 3 different dream schools, 3 reach schools. Now we can roll our eyes and say, well, that's a happy problem. But it wasn't to her, because suddenly she was faced with having to make what seemed to be an impossible decision. So we talked about it a lot. I learned from her all her thoughts about all 3 of these schools, the pros and cons of the 3 schools. We went into hypnosis and did an imagery session where I began to take her down each path, and I was not making up my mind where she should go. This isn't about me, okay? But as we subconsciously let go of the fears surrounding each of the 3 schools and accentuated the enthusiasm and the positive of each of the 3 schools, when she came out of hypnosis, she knew beyond a shadow of a doubt exactly which school she was going to go to. And the other 2 were distant seconds and thirds, although she still was thrilled she got into those ones, but she felt tremendous relief.
Okay.
And there's ways to do that.
That's really fascinating. And I do want to follow up on that one. Decision made, like it got clear. It seems like it got clear with her decisions.
Yeah.
However, we do have a question from Carol from New York. Asks this: what if it's a fear of something intangible like vulnerability? How could that work?
Beautiful. Hi, Carol from New York. Thank you for jumping on with us. fear of vulnerability, and certainly if we were in a session, I would want to know more about that. We have two goals. There's the self-protection goal over here, which says don't be vulnerable, you could get hurt again, probably. And then there's this, but I want to have a fun-filled, action-packed, exciting, connected life. So subconsciously, we are more geared toward survival, because the subconscious mind is afraid of bears and wants us to be able to run fast and hide from the bear. So when we've had situations.
So let's talk about that real quick, right? So when you talk about the survival context of what that means, when you're talking about, say, fear of vulnerability, what is the risk for a person if they are vulnerable?
That they could get hurt, that they could get rejected. And so then it's a matter of, now this is going to vary from person to person. Okay. And I'm not certain which area of your life, Carol, the vulnerability is currently, the fear of it is showing up. Okay. But there's a lot we can do with general confidence. There's a lot we do with self-esteem and getting a visceral experience of that, which has been there this whole time. You were born with it as a toddler before the fear of vulnerability, which was learned through life experiences and what we make up about those. So if you look on a playground, any 2-year-old is running around and they're vulnerable. They're going to go on the playground equipment they want to play on. They don't care what other kids want to. They don't care if their hair looks bad or that their butt looks fat from the side in their diaper. They don't care.
Or if they have clothes on. I see toddlers running around with no clothes on.
Oh my God. My little brother used to push his little bubble lawnmower, the little popcorn bubble lawnmower.
I had one of those. Yes.
You too? Well, my brother used to push his naked down the middle of the street. He loved nudity. When he doesn't anymore. Okay, but when he was a small toddler, he did. Yeah, so vulnerability used to be okay, and then it wasn't. So there needs to be a willingness to get hurt, but we learn how to let that be okay. Anytime we're engaged in living 100%, there's going to be a small percentage of the time probably where things don't work out. And there's going to be sadness or loss or disappointment. But we work also in how to not take that in as a reflection of who we are. So other people's, our approval needs are usually something that we're working on. So this is a multifaceted thing.
Oh, totally. So let's focus on using the tool of hypnosis. Where would you go with that? Like if someone came to you and said, yeah, you know what? I have a fear of getting hurt because it's happened tons of times before and I'm done, but I see the value of XYZ and I want a great relationship. So where would you go with that? Like how would that look like in a hypnotherapy session?
It's so individual. And the more that I'm told by the client, the more tools I have to help. So we start to look at some of that history. We don't need to necessarily dwell on it or relive it. Okay. But in the session, there's usually that's why my sessions are 90 minutes, because I want to spend a good hour.
Yeah,
really
you are thorough,
hearing
very thorough, which is
what
awesome.
the patterns are. Yes. And talking about maybe some strategies. And we come up with a strategy together on how we want to feel instead. The things we don't want to be driving the bus any longer, like this need to have to look good all the time. Or the need to be perfect. Or the need to be liked or digestible to someone else. And these things so we come up with a game plan of what we want to have happen. And then there's a certain amount of relief just in that. Now we know where to place our focus, where we don't want to place our focus, then going into hypnosis gives a visceral experience of comfort, of protection, and without ego, the knowing that you are not rejectable any more than a 2-year-old on a playground is. I don't care if their stomach looks fat from the side. You're not rejectable. Who you are can't be rejected. When we're not coming from fear, we're not repelling people either, and we're not attracting the assholes. We attract assholes when we get needy and clingy because we're not believing. So yes, we have a role to play in how a relationship falls apart, and who the types of people that we attract. When we feel not good enough, we try to find someone who we think is gonna raise our stock price.
We've talked about that one before. We have talked about that one before.
Yeah.
That it isn't about the external, it's about the internal.
Yeah.
And what I'm hearing from you is hypnosis creates safe space. No matter what it is, intangible or tangible, you're creating a safe space. If I have a fear of a spider or man-made objects underneath the sea, or if I have a fear of vulnerability or failure or being wrong.
Yeah.
I love it. Thank you for clarifying that. Now, I do want to go back to what you were talking about before with the client you brought up about the colleges and the decision making, because I do meet a lot of people in my travels. They are paralyzed in making decisions in everything. Life, career, their own vessel, fitness, relationships. And, I'm going to bring this one up. And this is a very funny story. Baseball season is starting. And I'm a big fan of baseball.
Yes, I do know that.
Yes. And I am a big fan of fantasy baseball, where you draft players and you do all this stuff, right? I knew a guy once, his name was Masher, nickname. Masher would download every single bit of information on every single bit of player on all the sites, ESPN, Sportsline, Sports Illustrated, the player site, MLB, all this stuff. Then during the draft, he would always fail. #fail, because he was literally looking through all these papers. One paper would say, don't draft that guy, he's going to be a bust. The other paper would say, draft him, he's a sleeper. And Masher would be paralyzed. So half the time he would misbid, other times he would just pass on the player who turned out to be a superstar. So I'm hearing that perhaps Masher should come and see you to get this decision-making cleared up. How does that work? Like, I know you walked us through the college application client, but how does that work to get clarity on this kind of stuff?
Well, my question for Masher would be, is he enjoying himself and having fun? Or is he only
doesn't when he drafts a bad team, but
if the only way you're going to have, of course, we all want to win, that's part of the joy of participation in anything, whether it's a sport or a business thing or fantasy baseball, but letting go of the fear. I mean, we can look at this at an energy level. And I don't do that out loud with all my clients, because they might go, oh, for God's sake, you're going to talk about that spiritual woo-woo shit now.
Woo-woo. Exactly.
But if I did, but it's really the same if we look at faith or a joy of the process. And when there's fear present, the intuition and the wisdom and the enjoyment of the present moment isn't there.
True that.
It's like we want that intuition to flow, but we want the intuition to flow because we're participating in life, and there's nothing more fun than getting together with a group of friends and picking a fantasy football thing. Well, to me, there's a lot more fun things than that, but No
Oh,
judgment,
come
but
on.
kind of
Hey.
I know. So
I'm just razzing you.
you picked a
Just razzing
sport,
you.
but like it's supposed to be a great fun time.
So let's say it is so the actual, like, there's too much going on and he does want to declutter to then really focus on what truly he wants in terms of his fantasy baseball team.
Yeah, because when we start, and all of our societies doing this, the end justifies the means mentality. And when we're doing that, we're thinking about the goal, which is great to have. I'm not saying throw them out the window, but it's fun to compete. It's fun to have challenges. But when stress starts to come in around it, that's not so fun. So, there can be positive motivations that have gotten woven together with these negative motivations. And so we can go and so mentally seeing that is great, but that's just the top 12% of your mind power. The bottom is like, oh no, I hate it when I lose it, when I pick these wrong players, or I hate it. It's terrible. I can't lose. And that I'm a failure. I suck. I can't have fun. I'm going to be depressed now. All that goes into, we don't want that to happen. We want to win. We want to win. And it becomes blech. So we want to go in there and go, hey, remember how fantasy baseball used to be a fun time? Remember that? Wouldn't that be nice? Yes, you can win, but aren't you going to have those beautiful, intuitive ideas about picking great players when there's not a fearful thing? And this is what I talk a lot about, being in the zone, whether it's with an athlete or with a hobbyist, or whether it's someone taking a test or an exam or whatever. Almost all of life, there's that being in the zone thing. And it could be they're in relationships, like Carol was talking about earlier, about, the fear of vulnerability. When that protection is there, we're not in the zone. We're not in that beautiful, magical, open, receiving place. And we can't even really see the other person because we're looking through a lens of, are they going to hurt me? And so we can't see who they are, because whatever they say or do always brings up a whole plethora of possibilities that they might hurt me. So this is to right the ship and to get this cleaned up. When we do it in one area of life subconsciously through hypnotherapy, it tends to clean up other areas of life also, because it's the root that you're trying to pull out of the ground is the same fear root that governs your relationships and your fantasy baseball.
Boom. The way you do one thing is the way you do everything. Now that's a catchphrase in the work, but it could be true in some cases.
Yeah.
And I like how you brought it full circle, back to the root, back to you pulling weeds.
Yes, which I should be doing more of if you saw my yard right now.
I have not seen your yard.
In theory, it sounds really good.
Spring has sprung, though.
It has.
We have a full moon. It's springtime. Summer is coming. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Any final words for our viewers out there regarding what we just talked about? I think we covered a lot. There's very, very interesting aspects, and we're just at the tip of the iceberg, actually. I
can go on tangents till the cows come home, you know that. But the final words for today, I think what's here now is to be very gentle with yourself, not at war with these fears or worries or whatever these things are. It's one thing to notice. It's a powerful thing to notice, I want to feel differently. And that's a great start. But then we want to surround just awareness around whatever is reactive without taking it so seriously, without feeling as though it's a monster we have to slay or fight. The way through it is to allow it to be there.
Well said.
And that's something that we can do consciously, because
Every
the
day.
same strategy works subconsciously. It's just more powerful subconsciously, but we want to be in that, all about what works rather than what doesn't.
Agree. And I'm going to say today, and like most every day, my observation of you in the zone. Well done. Thank you for sharing this. Very, very interesting. Great stuff. Thank you, viewers out there. And again, always, if you have any comments when you watch this later, please leave some comments and our friendly hypnotherapist will get back to you.
Yes.
As always, a pleasure, Ms. Janna. Thank you. You have an amazing rest of your Sunday and a powerful week. And again, the full moon's out there.
Oh, that was a really bad wolf howl. Oh, no. Not going to do it. Not going to ruin the episode with that. Have a great week yourself. Bye.
Will do.